a girl born into a hopeless place. Yosemin is only a week old, but every day has been a struggle. Her mother is a refugee. She travelled overland from Iran in search of a better life. But the only home her daughter knows is a place called the jungle. It's a shanty town on the shores of the English Channel, a makeshift camp that's home to nearly 10,000 people. They come here for many reasons, fleeing war, persecution and poverty. Some come here to disappear, others wait for their papers to be processed, and many take extraordinary risks to try and reach the United Kingdom.
No one can stop them, nothing can stop them coming to Calais. They want to move to UK, they get that in their mind, in their blood.
The jungle is a place where Europe's refugee crisis has reached its breaking point. There has been a makeshift camp near Calais since early 2000, and French authorities have so far been powerless to shut it down.
Nous devons démanteler complètement, définitivement, le campement de la Lande.
The jungle lives up to its name. It's a lawless place where murder, assault and rape are commonplace, where police rarely enter, and attacks on journalists are on the rise. It's chaotic, but also highly organised. The jungle is a fully functioning small town, and there are more international restaurants here than in Calais.
We try to make discotheque, bar, restaurant, to make our own life in this place.
Life here swings between fear, despair and hope.
If you can survive in jungle, you can survive everywhere.
I've come to this camp to find out what the future holds for the people here and experience, most probably, the last days of the jungle.
When we arrive here, there's nothing, it's a bush. We cut it, we make our own life here.
So if they come in and try to destroy everything and get rid of everything?
No, everybody here, we know that we don't have power to fight French government. We believe in God. So even though they destroy this place, we believe that where we are going or what we will do tomorrow will be better than this.
That's probably not too hard. Zimako takes us through the winding alleys of the camp. Most people live in tents, although some are fortunate enough to live in caravans or shipping containers. The conditions are poor and there's open sewage everywhere. It may not be pleasant, but life here has found a way, a type of orderly chaos. There are shops, restaurants, enterprise. Owners buy produce in town and mark it up in the jungle. They don't like being filmed. They're worried the police will come in and confiscate their property.
Many people here aren't that friendly, and I describe some of them, quite frankly, as downright hostile. And one of the reasons is because they're just really sick and tired of the media and everybody coming in here and involving themselves in their lives. Another reason is this collective experience of trauma that many people are already suffering from the countries they came, and this general distrust, I suppose, of outsiders.
There are around 1,000 unaccompanied minors here. UNICEF says many are being abused, forced into slavery or criminal activity.
والله صعب شديد يعني متأثر يعني وقاعدين في كالي يعني كالي مش أمان. والله الحياة صعبة شوية يعني الحياة صعبة في كالي شوية يعني في أمان الحمد لله بناكل بنشرب الحمد لله ما مقصرين. والله الأمان يعني 5%.
Under the law, France is responsible for their safety, and those with relatives in the UK are legally allowed to relocate there. But aid workers say that isn't happening. Ashraf, who's a refugee from Sudan, explains that life in the jungle has a maddening effect on its residents. Some have taken to drinking and drugs to cope. Others are shells of who they were.
A lot of them have shock. Is this Europe? A lot of them, they don't know that. And the idea in their mind, when they try to come here, it's different from this. Some people come here that they will, when they come soon, they get house, job, and they get their family. No, it may take 1 year, 2 years.
Many people here decide they can't wait that long.
في المرة الأولى كان الوضع صعب جدا، لكن المرة الثانية والثالثة بقيت عارف أي حاجة هنا في كالي، وبعرف بتصرف كيف مع البوليس الفرنسي. اليوم حاليا اللحظة اللي أنا واقف فيها أصلا عندي النية أمشي وأحاول أشوف طريقي، لكن يوم من الأيام حكون في الإنجليزي.
We've come back to the jungle. It's almost around 9 o'clock at night, and the reason we've come back now is because, according to the people who live here, the situation and the atmosphere really changes between the daytime and the nighttime, and this is where things get tense. And this is also the time when the migrants who are so desperate to get across to the United Kingdom try to do anything they can to smuggle themselves aboard lorries that are crossing the English Channel through the tunnel.
On the outskirts, the jungle seems eerily quiet. But as you move in, it comes to life. Patrick will show us around, not just because he knows his way, but because in a former life he was a judo champion and a bodyguard. The jungle is not a safe place to be, especially in the dark. Those who live here tell us stories of violence, robbery, murder, a crime-ridden slum where police won't go. It's law of the jungle, where problems are solved one way or another. We end up at the fence. Those brave enough need the cover of darkness to break through the barriers.
Il y a toujours des CRS qui contrôlent les autoroutes, quoi. Mais souvent, il y a des bagarres, ça passe ici, tu vois. Alors les gens essayent de couper les trucs là. Dans les CRS, ils tapent des bombes lacrymogènes. Bon, ça passe toute la journée, toute la nuit, tous les jours, donc ça passe.
Tonight, most of the people in the jungle are concerned with other things. Inside the wire, there are celebrations. This procession is part of an elaborate Ethiopian festival. It puts the police on edge, but they don't move in. It's not the only music in the camp. Just down the road, Beyonce. In a place where people live hand to mouth, somehow they've managed to set up a nightclub. There are strobe lights and cold beer, and no shortage of punters eager to drown their sorrows. Light unravels again over northern France. The jungle residents are slowly rising. Another long day of waiting stretched out before them. Others are up in Calais too, truck drivers whose fates seem tied to this place.
Here is storage.
Nick has been a truck driver for 20 years. He's driven the world, even through war-torn Syria. But he says this route is the worst he's been on.
I have friends that they stop him in the middle of the road and they beat him. For what? Why? It is dangerous because probably we will kill other people too. Because of what? Because we're fighting things in the middle of the street, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, we cannot see. And all of a sudden we are driving and we're in front of goods, pallets, other materials, things like that.
The aim of throwing things on the road is to slow the trucks down enough to jump on them. The British government is paying for a $2 million wall to be built that will stretch alongside the jungle. Truck drivers say it's welcome, but won't stop anyone. Many people don't see their futures jumping onto trucks and over walls, at least not right now. Some of the refugees in the camp are going to school to learn French or English. Teachers say they've never met students more eager to learn.
Vraiment, sincèrement, ils sont très très motivés. Ils ont une volonté très solide, ils sont très très motivés. Ils viennent chaque jour là. Il y en a même quelques-uns qui sont vraiment brillants. Ils viennent pour apprendre. Vraiment, on sent leur volonté d'apprentissage.
Refugees themselves say that's what inevitably separates success and failure here. Amir is one of the rare success stories.
So what is life like for you now? Because you're not here.
It's amazing. A lot of people, they don't know nothing about France. They're living here in jungle, they don't know nothing about France. Now I'm so happy because I had my document for 10 years and I hope soon I get my nationality. I'm so happy to be here.
Amir is only back at the camp to visit his friends, a routine that reminds a 25-year-old how lucky he is now to walk out of here and never call the jungle home again. The jungle may be closing, but that may not be enough to stop the flow of new arrivals. France wants to relocate everyone to other camps, but many say they've got no plans to move. They like it here, they have more freedom. But it's a ghetto with no oversight. People are subjected to horror here every day, including the most vulnerable residents, children. And looking out for them is not the priority of the French government, nor any other. This has all been described as a humanitarian catastrophe. But as they say around here, welcome to the jungle.
Well, joining me now from Geneva is William Spindler, a spokesperson for the UN Refugee Agency. And from London, I'm joined by Michael Binyon. He's a foreign affairs analyst and the former diplomatic editor of the Times newspaper. Thanks both so much for joining us. Let's first establish where you both stand on one of the fundamental issues here. Has the EU or France and the UK failed the people of the jungle camp in Calais, or was there never really a viable way to manage this influx? Michael Binyon, let me start with you.
I don't think there was ever a viable way to manage an influx so large, so unplanned, and so heterogeneous of so many people from so many different nationalities. Certainly there are people who claim and have a right to claim that they could go to the UK. They have relatives, they have family links, and they should be allowed in, especially, of course, the unaccompanied minors. But there are many people who have no claim, who are just hoping to get there, and in fact they're simply highlighting the problem of this massive wave of refugees coming into Europe in general, trying to do something that is frankly politically and physically impossible.
William Spindler, is that a fair assessment, or could the EU, the France and the UK, be doing more for these people that so desperately need help?
Well, I find it difficult to believe that the EU as a whole, which has a population of 500 million people, that has some of the most developed and richest economies in the world, cannot deal with a situation that has happened in the past and has been successfully dealt with. What we had last year was a huge number of people arriving, but also disarray in the way Europe reacted to this situation, with each country dealing with the situation on their own without working in a coordinated fashion, with some countries closing the borders, others simply hoping that the problem will go away, and others just closing their eyes to it. Of course, if you don't deal with the problem, then the problem becomes unmanageable. We think that there are things you can do to stabilize a situation like this, but that requires cooperation from all countries concerned. It means working with the countries from these people are coming from. It means trying to deal with the situation where it originates, in this case specifically Syria. What we saw last year was the effect of the civil war in Syria for the first time reaching Europe. That was a situation that was left to fester for 5 years.
But William, let me ask you, in the case of the jungle in Calais, these 7,000 to 10,000 people, many have criticized the United Nations for failing to provide the official oversight that it is obligated to provide in this massive camp, especially in the case of these hundreds of unaccompanied minors. Where has the United Nations been in the jungle?
Well, we cannot go to a place that it's outside the law, that it's not planned, that it's just an informal settlement. It's not a legal camp. We have no presence there. The French authorities are not present there, and that's why we have been advocating for some time that this place should be closed. You cannot have a situation that it's outside the law, where there is no proper accommodation to people. The answer is to close this camp and to provide alternatives, not simply to close it and scatter people away. That was done in the past, and the problem came back. You need to address the problem, and for that you need a comprehensive solution. You need countries to work together. The United Nations, the UNHCR, is overstretched. We have 65 million displaced people around the world, some of them, most of them, in the poorest countries in the world. So Europe has to deal with the situation. We can be part of the solution. We are willing to work with Europe, but Europe has to take the lead.
Okay.
And not expect the international community to come and set up refugee camps as you would have in other parts of the poorer parts of the world.
Michael Binyon, is that a fair assessment? Is this out of the United Nations jurisdiction, and it does fall squarely on EU, British and French authorities?
Well, in that the jungle is not an official camp, yes, that is technically correct. I think the UNHCR does have a real problem here because the refugee flow is more or less unstoppable. And I agree with William that, of course, the key aim is to try to stabilize the situation in the countries from which people come. But there are a whole lot of related problems that make it extremely difficult to do that. First of all, there is no political agreement about how to end the civil war in Syria. Secondly, there are a huge number of people coming who are not actually technically refugees. They are economic migrants searching for a better life. Well, that's all very well, and one applauds the initiative of people doing that, but there is no obligation on Europe to help people find a better life. Europe cannot have an open door policy, and the more you allow people to come in without any particular claim to asylum, the more people will come. It's the magnet effect. And I think Europe is understandably now in despair at the seemingly endless stream of people coming, and as a result, it has closed the door and put up the barriers, and I think politically that is completely understandable.
So, William Spindler, is Michael Binyon correct there, that this open arms policy will only further provoke mass immigration?
I agree that many people who come to Europe are not refugees, they are economic migrants. And I also agree that Europe doesn't have a responsibility to let people who come here simply to look for work. There needs to be a way for economic migrants to travel legally. And the same for refugees, we believe. What we have here is a disorganized movement of people. What we are advocating for is for the organized movement of people, organized economic migration and organized movement of refugees. You need to separate the refugees from the economic migrants. Those who have no claim to protection in Europe
William, why
should
is
be
that
sent
not
back
being
in a
done?
humane way, with help, but they should be.
Why is that
well,
not
it has
being
been done. It's being done, but no, it is being done. It is being done. There are status determination procedures in all EU countries. What we have at the moment is the uncontrolled movement of people who arrive in Europe, and what we want is for these movements to be predictable, to be organized, to be safe, so that people travel legally with a place waiting for them, whether we are talking about economic migrants or refugees, rather than what we have at the moment, which is people moving by their own means
William,
with the help of smugglers.
That way.
This only encourages crime and...
These people are desperate and they will do what they need to do to get where they want to go. But the one thing that the UN does have an obligation to intervene in this case is in the case, as I mentioned before, these unaccompanied minors. Why are hundreds of them being allowed to stay in the vulnerability and the risk of these camps without intervention from any authorities?
Well, the situation is complex. Many countries have a provision for unaccompanied children of their own nationality. The problem is that many of these facilities are not appropriate for children who are either economic migrants or refugees. They are particularly vulnerable. They are in a very difficult situation, but the centers to cater for unaccompanied children are not suitable for many of these children who simply, when they are taken there by the authorities, simply leave and go away because these places don't have interpreters, they don't have child psychologists, they don't have the type of support that they need. So again, we have to look into the structures of the countries concerned. You cannot seriously expect us to take resources away from Africa or from the poorest part of the world and bring them to Europe when Europe has the infrastructure and the capacity. But what Europe doesn't have so far is the political will to work together to address the problem.
And Michael, as you mentioned, you feel there needs to be more effort made to better screen or separate economic migrants from those who have viable claims as refugees and asylum seekers. So why do you think the UK, France, and the European Union are not providing the infrastructure to better screen the people in places like Calais so that the processes can move forward and help those that are in need of help and deserve that help under international law?
Well, the UK is not screening people in Calais because they're in Calais. They're not in Britain. And if they came to Britain, they would be screened. And I'm afraid most of them would be turned back because many of them are not genuine refugees. Britain's policy is to stop people coming in the first place with the idea that they should be encouraged to stay as near as possible to their original homeland. That is why Britain is providing more money than any other country in helping Syrian refugees in camps in Lebanon and Jordan, and indeed in providing such infrastructure as education. I'm in fact going to Syria and Jordan myself next week to go and look at the provision for children in these camps so that they are not alienated and uprooted by coming to places which are not welcoming and which really tear them away from their roots. Now, I think the other main thing that Europe has not done, which it must do, is really take a tough line against the human trafficking. These people are victims of ruthless traffickers, of criminal gangs who are luring people, both refugees and economic migrants, with false promises and with providing leaky boats so that they think they'll be able to cross in safety to Europe. These gangs must be smashed by military means if necessary, because they are the criminal elements which are encouraging this trade in human misery.
William Spindler, final words?
I agree with these proposals. I agree that we need to help refugees where they are, the countries that are giving them asylum, and we need also to combat in a robust way trafficking. But I would add, for these two measures to have an effect, you also need to have regular legal ways for refugees to travel safely from countries of asylum through resettlement into Europe, into North America and other parts of the world.
William Spindler and Michael Binyon, I'd like to thank you both so much for joining us on this edition of the Newsmakers.